What if the universe wasn't actually created 13.8 billion years ago?
Right, which is what we've all been taught in school.
Exactly. But what if it's being created right now? Like in this exact millisecond, continuously projected into existence, almost like a film running through a projector.
That is a massive, a truly fundamental question to ask.
It really is. And what if the standard way we've been taught to look at physics, you know, particles, time, space, the whole Big Bang thing, is just one very specific, mathematically heavy way to view reality?
A reality that might actually have a much simpler underlying architecture.
Yes. But usually when someone poses a question that big, it's followed by some highly dense, totally impenetrable math that just alienates like 99% of us.
Oh, absolutely. We are totally culturally conditioned to believe that understanding reality requires, a PhD in quantum mechanics.
Right, we expect the bubbling flasks and the giant particle accelerators and, whiteboards just completely covered in Greek letters.
Which is intimidating for most people.
It is. But today on this deep dive, we're looking at something entirely different. Today's date is August 3, 2026, and that is an incredibly significant date for the stack of sources sitting right here in front of us.
It really is a milestone.
We have exclusive access to a document that represents the crystallization of a 34-year intellectual journey. And it wasn't started with some big press conference at CERN.
No, not at all.
It officially crossed the starting line with a single dramatic word typed into a set of project notes. Just one word, which was NAW.
It's a fascinating psychological pivot, honestly, because the author of this work spent over 3 decades just, existing in a realm of pure hypothesis.
Just dreaming it up, basically.
Exactly. Structural design and theory. So typing that word now wasn't just some dramatic flourish.
Right.
It marked the definitive end of that dreaming phase and the beginning of the concrete execution. It was the exact moment this massive theoretical framework was finally locked in.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we are acting as your personal guides through the Master Development Roadmap and the Visual Philosophy for a groundbreaking scientific monograph.
Titled S-Matter in Fifth Dimension, Revision 20.0.
Yes, but here is the critical part for you, the listener. Our mission isn't just to summarize some dry textbook. Our mission is to uncover the architectural blueprint of this framework, right?
Right.
We want to explore the personal motivation that fueled this 34-year obsession. And most importantly, we want to clarify exactly how a curious non-expert should approach these seemingly intimidating concepts.
We're basically handing you the master key to how this entire system is built.
Exactly. We want to guide you through the structure so you don't get lost.
And I think we really need to establish the boundaries of this blueprint immediately.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The document we're analyzing today is not, some arrogant attempt to overthrow modern science.
But you see a lot on the internet, unfortunately.
Oh, constantly. But this is a conceptual framework. It explicitly asks you, the reader, to maintain an open, inquisitive mindset. It doesn't attempt to replace established physical laws.
Or the measurements we get from those laws.
Right. It accepts them. That's a common, often fatal pitfall of many alternative theoretical works. They try to say the math is wrong.
Yeah, they just throw out gravity or something.
Exactly. Instead, this roadmap offers a completely new conceptual lens through which to view the data we already have.
Which is a huge relief, honestly. So whether you are a hardcore physics buff or just someone who, looks up at the stars and wonders what the heck is actually going on up there, this deep dive is built for you.
It's very approachable.
But before we start throwing around terms like fifth dimension and emergent space-time, I think we need to ground this in reality a bit.
Good idea. The human element is so important here.
Right, I want to know about the human being behind this. Why did the author, Hakan Yushuk, spend 34 years of his life agonizing over this?
Well, to understand the architecture, you really do have to understand their architect. And the origin of this entire framework stems from a really profound psychological experience back in 1992.
Okay.
The author was simply looking at a poster of the Andromeda Galaxy on a wall.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this. My brain is trying to picture this. A poster on a wall. I had posters of sports cars and like rock bands in my room in the 90s, and they definitely didn't inspire me to rewrite the ontological foundation of the universe.
Yeah, it's a bit of a leap.
So what exactly happens when looking at a galaxy poster that triggers a 34-year physics project?
It triggers what psychologists refer to as scale-induced awe.
Scale-induced awe. Okay.
Yeah, so when you look at an image of a galaxy, at first glance, it often just looks like this beautiful glowing cloud of cosmic dust.
Right, just a smudge of light.
But there is a cognitive threshold you cross when your brain suddenly comprehends the reality of the image. The author realized that every single microscopic, hazy speck of light in that cloud wasn't dust.
It was a star.
Each speck was an entire star, and many of those have their own planetary systems.
Oh, wow.
And if you pull back even further to like a deep field image, every speck is another entire galaxy containing billions of stars.
So it's that vertigo feeling, that sudden crushing realization of how incredibly tiny we actually are.
Precisely, it's overwhelming. But for the author, it didn't just stop at vertigo, it forced a cognitive shift. The universe ceased to be this abstract concept, just a set of equations in a textbook.
It became real.
It became something almost impossibly vast, complex, and physically real. That moment of awe demanded a deeper, more cohesive understanding of how such a colossal structure could exist.
But, I mean, awe doesn't automatically equal a valid scientific theory.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Like, I can be in awe of a thunderstorm, but that doesn't mean I suddenly know how meteorology works.
That's a great point.
The sources actually note that early on, he admits his thoughts were just imaginative thought experiments. He was reading everything he could about cosmology, and he started getting really frustrated with the standard explanations.
Right. He was looking for a narrative that made sense.
Exactly. And the notes specifically mention his dissatisfaction with the lambda CDM model. Okay,
Yeah.
before we go any further,
Yeah.
what exactly is the lambda CDM model?
I know, the acronyms in physics are terrible.
Because if you throw an acronym like that at me, my eyes are just going to glaze over immediately.
That is a very fair point. So, lambda CDM stands for lambda cold dark matter.
Okay.
It is the current working model of Big Bang cosmology. Lambda represents dark energy, which is driving the accelerated expansion of the universe.
Right, the stuff pushing everything apart.
Exactly. And cold dark matter represents the invisible mass that holds galaxies together. It is a highly successful mathematical model. I mean, it predicts the cosmic microwave background and the large-scale structure of the universe remarkably well.
Okay, so if it works so well mathematically, why was the author so dissatisfied with it? Was he just, trying to be a contrarian?
No, and that is a really crucial distinction to make. The author's dissatisfaction was not with the mathematics. It wasn't with the observational data.
He wasn't saying the telescopes were wrong.
He accepted those entirely. His issue was with the conceptual narrative draped over the math.
Ah, okay.
The standard model tells us how the universe expands, and it tells us how galaxies rotate. But conceptually, it relies on placeholder terms.
Placeholders. Like what?
Well, like dark matter itself. We don't actually know what dark matter is. We just know there is missing mass, so we plug a variable into the equation to make the math work.
So it's like an accounting trick, almost.
Kind of, yeah. The author felt that while the math was robust, the conceptual explanations felt fragmented and incomplete.
So he takes these imaginative thought experiments, this frustration with the narrative, and he starts trying to build a better conceptual architecture.
Yes, starting from scratch, conceptually.
But again, I have to play the skeptic here. The history of theoretical physics is absolutely littered with, amateur frameworks where someone just falls in love with their own imagination.
Well, there are thousands of them out there.
Right, they ignore all the physical evidence and start publishing absolute nonsense about crystal vibrations or whatever. How does this roadmap avoid that trap?
By subjecting that imagination to a brutal, decades-long gauntlet of rigorous methodology. The author established a hard rule early on.
Which was?
Every single imaginative leap had to be ruthlessly compared with established physical laws and empirical observations.
So if a thought experiment sounded incredibly cool, and maybe it solved a huge conceptual problem, but it contradicted, say, the known speed of
He
light,
threw it out,
just tossed it.
completely abandoned it. The roadmap documents a process of systematic elimination. It is not about forcing the universe to fit a preconceived notion.
Which is what cranks usually do.
Exactly. It is about finding a conceptual architecture that naturally accommodates undeniable data. The ideas that actually survived this 30-year filtering process were the ones that didn't break established physics. Eventually, those isolated surviving concepts began to interlock.
And that formed the foundation of Revision 20.0.
Precisely.
That level of intellectual discipline is staggering. And honestly, it leads to a massive point of relief for the reader. Because as I was going through the roadmap, I kept expecting to see mandates for complex calculus and tensor geometry.
Which is terrifying for most of us.
It is, but I found a specific rule that explicitly avoids unnecessary equations.
It is a highly deliberate pedagogical choice.
Thank goodness.
The framework makes a profound distinction between a mathematical description and a conceptual interpretation. As we discussed with the Lambda CDM model, the existing math already explains the behavior of observable phenomena perfectly.
Wait, so the book won't actually teach me how to calculate the trajectory of a photon?
No, because that isn't its purpose. To use an analogy, the current mathematical models in physics are like the detailed engineering schematics of a car's engine. They tell you exactly how the pistons fire, how the fuel combusts, all the timing. But this framework is not trying to redraw that engine schematic.
Right.
It is trying to provide a map of the entire highway system the car is driving on. And it's trying to explain why the highway was built in the first place.
That makes a lot of sense. The author actually notes that if a formal mathematical proof is required for a specific new concept down the line, it will be published as a separate companion paper.
Exactly.
It just refuses to let the conceptual elegance of the main book get bogged down in equations just to look more, authoritative or scientific.
That decision reveals the primary objective of the entire project: clarity over posturing. The goal is to make the universe understandable, not to obscure it behind a wall of specialized language.
Which is a perfect segue into the actual mindset the roadmap demands.
Yeah.
Because now we know why he wrote it and how he filtered his ideas.
Yeah.
But the roadmap actually contains instructions on how you, the reader, are supposed to process the information. And they introduced this editorial rule called the principle of intellectual honesty.
It serves as the ethical and structural backbone of the entire publication.
The rule mandates that whenever the framework reaches the absolute limit of current human knowledge, it must declare that limitation explicitly.
No hiding behind jargon.
Right. The roadmap gives the exact, approved phrasing that the author is forced to use in the text. Phrases like, "At present, this question remains open within the framework," or "This interpretation is speculative and awaits future evidence."
Very transparent.
But I have to ask, doesn't that make the framework look kind of weak?
How do you mean?
Well, if I'm reading a book that claims to explain reality, and every few chapters the author says, "I actually don't know the answer to this," doesn't that undermine their authority?
It's entirely counterintuitive, I know, but it actually achieves the exact opposite. Yeah. In the current landscape of theoretical physics, there is immense pressure to project a false sense of absolute certainty.
People want to be the next Einstein.
Exactly. Many theoretical models stretch their assumptions incredibly thin to claim they have solved everything. But that eventually breeds deep skepticism in the reader.
Because the reader can smell the BS.
Yeah.
They know nobody has all the answers.
Exactly. The author's developmental notes argue that these admissions of limitation are actually strengths.
Ah.
By telling the reader exactly where certainty ends and exploration begins, the framework fosters immense trust. It respects the reader's intelligence.
It's not trying to pull one over on you.
Right. It establishes a dynamic where the author is essentially saying, "We have walked this path together as far as the light reaches. Beyond this point, the map is still blank, and I am not going to lie to you and pretend I've been there."
Okay, I can see how that builds trust. And to make sure that map stays crystal clear, the roadmap enforces another brutal editorial rule regarding the 3 distinct voices used in the writing.
This is one of my favorite parts of the structure.
The mandate is that these 3 voices must never blend or mix on the page.
This is perhaps the most important mechanical rule in the entire roadmap for ensuring reader comprehension.
Because things get messy otherwise.
Exactly. Alternative theoretical works almost always fail because they blur the line between what is an established fact and what is the author's opinion. By strictly separating the text into 3 distinct voices, that confusion is eliminated entirely.
Let's break down those voices for everyone. Voice number 1 is the voice of science.
Yes.
This is reserved strictly for established observations, objective measurements, and universally accepted physics. So this is where the text would state things like, the speed of light in a vacuum is approximately 300,000 kilometers per second, or the universe is expanding.
Undeniable empirical reality.
Right. The second voice is the researcher. This is the author stepping into the text to offer his personal interpretation.
And he has to announce that, right?
Yeah, it requires the use of specific introductory phrases like, "I propose," or "I interpret." This is where the author attempts to connect the dots between the undeniable facts.
Right, putting the pieces together.
And then we have the third voice, the framework itself. This voice is used to outline the internal definitions and the logical rules of the system being built.
The internal logic.
Things like, within the framework, projection is defined as, or the substrate operates under the condition of.
Exactly. It defines the parameters of the system.
Okay, my brain needs a better way to hold on to this. Let's think of this like a sports broadcast.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The voice of science is the play-by-play announcer. They are just calling the undeniable action on the field. The quarterback threw the ball, the receiver caught it at the 20-yard line. Fact.
Right, no interpretation there.
None. The voice of the researcher is the color commentator sitting next to him, offering their opinion. I think he threw that pass too early because he looked panicked by the defensive line. That's an interpretation of the event.
A very clear distinction.
And the voice of the framework is the actual NFL rulebook itself, which defines what a catch actually is and what the boundaries of the field are.
That is an exceptionally clear analogy. Now, imagine how terrible that sports broadcast would be if the color commentators started stating their opinions as if they were written in the rulebook.
It would be awful.
Or if they started pretending their interpretation of the play was the physical reality of the play itself. It would be chaos. The listener wouldn't know what actually happened.
That makes total sense. If the author starts pretending his interpretation of quantum mechanics is an established fact of quantum mechanics, the whole system just loses credibility.
Yes, and the roadmap acts as the broadcast director, strictly keeping those voices separated.
Observation comes first. Interpretation comes second. The framework comes third.
That explicit hierarchy prevents the arrogance found in so many grand theories of everything.
So we have this incredibly rigorous, honest mindset established. We know the rules of engagement, but what does a book built on these rules actually look like?
That's a great question.
Because if you have 34 years of accumulated knowledge, my immediate fear is that I'm going to be handed a 900-page, densely packed, microscopic font textbook that requires a magnifying glass to read.
And nobody wants to read that. That is where the roadmap's visual philosophy document comes into play, and it is arguably just as critical as the scientific notes.
Really, the visuals are that important.
Absolutely. The author made a deliberate structural choice to format the publication as an A4 scientific monograph, but with the visual layout of a modern magazine.
A magazine. Like clean columns, minimalist design, lots of white space.
Precisely. The core visual philosophy is defined as simplicity as a scientific principle.
I love that phrase.
It's great, right? The author astutely noted that scientific concepts are inherently difficult. The cognitive load required to understand the emergence of space-time is already immense.
Tell me about it.
Therefore, the physical layout of the page should not add to that cognitive burden.
Right. If my brain is already sweating trying to understand the fifth dimension, don't make me read an unbroken margins-to-margins wall of tiny text.
Exactly. The physical presentation must serve the primary goal of the framework, which is clarity. If an idea is conceptually dense, the layout must be airy and approachable.
And they enforce this clarity with a pacing rule that I found absolutely fascinating.
The chapter structure.
Yeah. The structure of the book works like this. The major sections use Roman numerals like Part 1, Part 2, but the chapters themselves do not have numbers, only titles.
Right.
And here's the brutal part. Every single chapter is permitted to focus on exactly one fundamental question. One chapter, one idea.
It is a mechanism to prevent conceptual bleeding.
Conceptual bleeding, that's a good way to put it.
If a chapter is titled, "What is Time?" the author is not allowed to suddenly detour into a dense explanation of dark matter or quantum entanglement within that chapter.
It keeps them on a leash.
It forces immense discipline on the writer and provides a clear, digestible milestone for the reader.
And the kicker is what happens at the end of the chapter. The roadmap dictates that every single chapter must conclude with a conceptual summary plate.
A single full-page visual map.
Yes, of the core idea that was just discussed. And the rule attached to this is ruthless. If the author cannot summarize the entire chapter in one clear diagram, the chapter is deemed too messy.
The idea is deemed flawed.
And the whole thing has to be rewritten from scratch.
It is a phenomenal quality control mechanism. It's important to note, though, that the roadmap explicitly states these diagrams are not intended to be literal physical representations or decorative art.
So it's not like a high-res photo of the Big Bang.
Right. You aren't looking at a photograph of the universe. They are conceptual maps. They are visual tools designed to communicate complex relationships between ideas that would otherwise require 10 pages of dense text to convey.
It's the ultimate test of understanding. If you can't draw the map, you don't actually know where you are.
Exactly.
But this strict discipline naturally brings up a problem. If you are restricted to one idea per chapter, What do you do with all the advanced, complicated physics that eventually has to be addressed?
You can't just ignore it.
Right. This leads to a behind-the-scenes secret in the roadmap called the parking lot, or the deferred topics list.
This is a vital pedagogical strategy.
How so?
Well, when you are building an ontological foundation from the ground up, advanced topics like quantum superposition, black hole singularities, or dark energy will inevitably surface in the author's mind.
Of course they will.
The temptation for most theorists is to cram those complex ideas into the early chapters to prove to the academic community that their framework is comprehensive and sophisticated.
Like, look how smart I am. I can explain a black hole on page 10.
Exactly. But doing so completely alienates the general reader because the foundational rules haven't even been established yet. So the author actively parked these complex phenomena.
He just put them in a timeout.
He created a list of deferred topics that were strictly forbidden from entering the foundational chapters.
Okay, so from a reader's perspective, this is a massive win. It means I am not going to get blindsided by advanced quantum mechanics on page 5.
Exactly. By creating this deferred topics list, the author guarantees that the foundational ontology, the absolute basics of how the framework operates, is completely solid and fully understood by the reader before moving on.
That makes total sense.
By the time you, the reader, finally encounter the chapter dedicated to dark matter, you already have a perfect grasp of the underlying architecture.
So it doesn't feel like a math test you didn't study for.
Right. So when dark matter is introduced, it doesn't feel like a sudden, incomprehensible mystery. It feels like a logical, natural extension of the rules you've already spent chapters absorbing.
It's brilliant pacing. You build the foundation before you try to install the roof.
Well said.
And speaking of locking in the foundation, there is one final structural rule in the roadmap that highlights just how serious that August 3, 2026 start date really is. It's the version control protocol.
The V1.0 frozen state.
Yes. The roadmap dictates a strict progression for the text. Chapters move from an initial draft to a revised state to a final draft and eventually to a status labeled V1.0 approved.
It's very systematic.
And I love this part. Once a chapter hits V1.0, it is thrown in a vault and the door is locked. It is practically untouchable.
The roadmap states it can never be altered again unless a genuine, undeniable scientific inconsistency is discovered later in the process that breaks the logic.
Why be so strict about it?
Because the author realized a painful truth about massive creative or scientific endeavors. To actually finish a 34-year project, you have to kill the urge to endlessly tinker.
Oh, the perfectionism trap.
Exactly. You can always find a slightly better adjective or a slightly cleaner sentence structure, but if you succumb to that, you will never publish.
You'll just be editing until you die.
The V1.0 protocol marks the psychological transition from the endless phase of design into the finalized concrete framework. The blueprints are approved, no more changes, now we build.
Right. We've examined the blueprints. We know the strict editorial rules, we understand the visual layout, and we know the mindset required. Now we have to actually step onto the construction site.
Let's get into the actual content.
Let's dive into Part 1, Foundations. I want to see exactly how these 3 voices and 1 idea rules play out when the framework tries to answer the biggest, most intimidating question possible. What actually is reality?
To answer that, the framework must establish its core ontological architecture, and right out of the gate, it makes a highly bold, simplifying move.
Okay, what is it?
In modern theoretical physics, there is a tendency to propose increasingly complicated structures to solve problems.
Like infinite parallel universes.
Or 11 hidden spatial dimensions curled up like tiny springs. This framework rejects all that complexity. It relies on a monistic reality.
Okay, pause. Monistic reality. For the listener who hasn't taken a Philosophy 101 class in a decade, give me the ground-level translation. What does monistic mean in this context?
Well, ontology is simply the study of being, what exists and how it exists. A dualistic reality would suggest the universe is made of 2 fundamentally different, incompatible things, like mind and matter. A monistic reality, which this framework adopts, proposes that everything, at its absolute most fundamental root, is derived from a single, unified source.
One source for everything.
Exactly. The framework structures this monistic reality into just 2 ontological domains, connected by one continuous relationship.
All right, let's look at Domain 1. The roadmap calls this the 5th dimensional substrate.
The substrate.
And I have to jump in here immediately because pop culture and sci-fi movies have completely ruined the word dimension for the general public.
Oh, completely.
When people hear fifth dimension, they think of a parallel universe where they have a goatee and evil twin, or like a secret room hidden behind a bookshelf in space.
Precisely. And the roadmap goes out of its way to dismantle that misconception right away. The framework explicitly states that the substrate is timeless and non-spatial.
Wait, it exists completely outside of observable space-time.
Correct.
Hold on, I'm snagging on this. If it is non-spatial, it has no size.
Right.
And if it is timeless, nothing ever happens there. Where is it then? How can something exist if it isn't anywhere and it has no time? That sounds like magic or mysticism, not physics.
It is a difficult concept to grasp because our brains evolved to understand 4D space and time. You
Yeah.
cannot travel to the substrate in a spaceship because it is not a physical place within the universe.
So it's not a destination.
Think of it less as a location and more as a fundamental condition. The framework defines the substrate as containing the structural potential of reality.
Structural potential.
And it consists entirely of a unified fundamental essence called S-energy.
Okay, so it's the raw, unmanifested clay of the universe. It is the ultimate underlying wellspring from which everything else is drawn.
Exactly. It is pure potential.
All right. Then we look at domain 2, which is observable spacetime.
Our universe?
Right. This is the 4D universe that we actually inhabit. This is the realm of planets, stars, coffee cups, biological life, and scientific measurements.
The stuff we can see and touch.
This domain is bound by time, it exists within space, it is subject to entropy, and it is constantly evolving.
So on one hand, you have the timeless, non-spatial substrate of pure potential, which is domain 1.
Sure.
On the other hand, you have the messy, evolving 4D universe we live in, domain 2. How do they interact? Because a pile of unmanifested clay doesn't just turn into a coffee cup on its own.
Right. Something has to shape it. Yeah. This brings us to the one continuous relationship connecting the two domains. The framework calls it projection.
Yes.
And honestly, this is where the entire theory blew my mind.
Because it fundamentally reorients how we view the history of the universe.
Yes. In standard cosmology, we think of the creation of the universe as a single distant event.
The Big Bang.
The Big Bang happened 13.8 billion years ago. The universe exploded outward, and now it's just slowly coasting and aging. But in this framework, projection isn't a synonym for a past event.
No, it's not in the past at all.
It is the continuous realization of reality.
This is the paradigm shift the author is proposing. The framework posits that the observable universe exists right now because it is being actively and continuously projected from the substrate.
Actively projected.
Observable spacetime is not a static object that was created once and left to decay. It is an ongoing, active manifestation.
Let me try to put an analogy to this mechanism because it's so wild. Think of projection like a traditional movie projector in a cinema.
Okay, I like that.
The movie playing on the silver screen where there's motion, time passes, and things change. That is our 4D observable universe, domain 2.
Right.
The film reel sitting inside the projector,
Right.
containing all the static potential frames of the movie simultaneously, is the substrate, domain 1.
The pure potential.
But the actual mechanism, the blinding beam of light pulling the potential from the film and throwing it onto the screen to make it real, that beam of light is projection.
That is a highly effective way to visualize the relationship.
And the mind-bending implication of that analogy is this. If you pull the plug on the projector, the movie doesn't just pause and stay on the screen.
No, it vanishes entirely.
It ceases to be displayed. The framework implies that the universe exists in this exact second because it is actively being projected into reality in this exact second.
It is a profound concept. However, if we follow your movie projector analogy, it raises a massive logical gap that the framework must address.
What gap?
If reality is continuously being projected from a realm of pure, undifferentiated potential S energy, why isn't the universe just a chaotic, swirling, random mess of energy?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Why does the projection have order? Why do atoms in the Andromeda Galaxy behave exactly like atoms on Earth? Why are the laws of physics consistent across billions of light years?
Right, if projection is just a raw beam of power, what is giving the universe its specific shape?
To solve this, the framework introduces the mechanism of the projection codex.
The codex, it sounds incredibly sci-fi.
It does sound like a movie title.
Is this just a convenient magical rulebook the author invented to make the math work out?
Not at all. It is a necessary set of physical constraints. The projection codex is not a physical object floating in space somewhere.
It's not a giant stone tablet.
Exactly. It is the complete set of structural and organizational principles that govern how S-energy can manifest into the 4D universe.
Okay.
It ensures the stability, the transformation, and the selection of projected manifestations.
So going back to the cinema analogy, projection is the raw, powerful light bulb.
Yes.
But the projection codex is the intricate lens system, the focal knobs, and the internal gears that ensure the film plays at exactly 24 frames per second in perfect focus and doesn't catch fire.
Exactly. It is the physical mechanism that enforces order on the raw light.
That makes it so much easier to picture.
If projection is the hardware power supply bringing reality into existence, the projection codex is the operating system determining the immutable rules of that reality.
The operating system.
Yeah.
I love that.
It is the reason the projected universe is stable, lawful, and reproducible. And notice how beautifully this adheres to the framework's core mandate of simplicity.
It really does. You have two domains, the substrate and space-time. You have one connection, projection.
Yeah.
And you have one set of rules, the codex.
Very elegant.
It is an incredibly clean, minimalist architectural foundation, but as beautiful as that foundation is, we have to address the elephant in the room.
The emergence of physical properties.
Exactly. We have this timeless, non-spatial substrate, but look around you. I am sitting in a spatial room. I am wearing a watch that tracks time.
Right. Our reality is very spatial and temporal.
If time and space don't exist in domain one, where do they come from? How do we get space, time, and solid stuff from a foundation that possesses none of those qualities?
This pushes us into parts 2 and 3 of the roadmap, which detail the emergence of the universe.
And emergence is the key word, right?
The operative word here is emergence. The framework fundamentally rejects the idea that time and space are absolute, independent containers that just exist on their own.
Like an empty box waiting to be filled.
Right. In this framework, time and space do not exist in the substrate. There is no concept of before or after in the fifth dimension.
My brain is struggling with this. Time feels so incredibly fundamental to me. How can time not be a fundamental property of reality?
It is not a property of ultimate reality, which is the substrate. The framework argues that temporal ordering the sequence of past, present, and future emerges only as reality is continuously realized through projection into domain 2.
So it's a byproduct.
Time is an exclusive characteristic of the projected 4D universe.
So the famous arrow of time, the fact that we only age forward, that dropped glasses shatter but don't unshatter, that causes always pre-seed effects, that it's just a localized rule of the manifestation.
Yes. It is a property of the projection, dictated by the codex, not a property of the underlying S-energy.
Wow.
Think of space and time as the canvas that projection continuously weaves in order to have a surface to paint the universe on. Space and time do not exist inside the paint tube. They only exist once the act of painting begins.
Okay, that canvas analogy actually helps a lot. Measurable distances, geometry, locations, these concepts only have meaning within observable space-time. They're actively generated by the projection codex.
Exactly.
But what about the paint itself? What about the actual physical stuff that makes up the universe? While I was reading through the roadmap notes, I found this incredible real-time realization the author had while outlining these specific chapters.
Oh, this is a great part of the notes.
He originally planned to have a foundational chapter, simply titled Matter. But right there in the margins of the notes, you can see him stop and realize he's made a massive error in terminology.
It is a perfect example of his rigorous intellectual honesty in action.
Yeah. He realizes that titling a chapter Matter implies that matter is the fundamental primary building block of reality.
But his own framework argues that matter is not primary. S-energy in the substrate is primary.
So he strikes out the word matter and changes the chapter title to Observable Manifestations. It seems like a minor semantic change, but it is actually a profound conceptual pivot.
Language dictates conceptual boundaries in physics.
Very true.
By changing it to observable manifestations, the framework clarifies that everything in our universe, solid matter, kinetic energy, electromagnetic fields, the force of gravity, are all just different manifestations of the exact same underlying S-energy.
So if I'm looking at an electron, a photon of light, a magnetic field, and the wooden desk I'm sitting at the deepest ontological level, they're all made of the exact same raw stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
They're just organized into different patterns by the projection codex.
Exactly. And once again, we see the discipline of the framework. This concept does not replace particle physics.
Right, doesn't break the math we already have.
The standard model of particle physics still perfectly and mathematically describes how that electron behaves and interacts. The framework simply gives the electron, the photon, and the magnetic field a unified ontological origin.
It provides the deeper why.
Yes, the why being that they are all S-energy manifestations, without disturbing the established how, which is the math of quantum fields.
It is the ultimate expression of the monistic reality, finding the unified source beneath the diverse complexity of the universe.
It really is.
Okay, so this naturally exposes what feels like a massive contradiction. We have one unified, timeless source of S-energy being continuously projected into a 4D canvas.
Right.
If it all comes from one simple source, why is the universe so absurdly complex? Why didn't the projection just create a universe filled with an even, boring, uniform mist of hydrogen gas?
That would be much simpler.
Exactly. How do we get spiral galaxies, tectonic plates, DNA, and human brains capable of doing deep dives about reality?
This brings us to a major structural bridge in the roadmap's design, moving from pure ontology to physical cosmology.
Okay, how did that bridge work?
The framework posits that projection provides the raw possibility of structure, and the projection codex provides the baseline rules for stability.
Okay.
But how does that physical structure actually evolve, change, and grow in the real universe? That mechanism is governed entirely by thermodynamics.
Okay. The laws of physics finally take the driver's seat.
Precisely. The author draws a crucial boundary line. The ontological level, which is projection, is responsible for realizing the universe, bringing it into existence.
Right.
But once it is in existence in domain 2, the physical level, thermodynamics, takes over to govern how energy flows, dissipates, and interacts within that realized space.
But wait, doesn't the second law of thermodynamics say that everything constantly decays into chaos?
Yes, entropy.
Total entropy or disorder must always increase over time, energy dissipates. So how does a physical law that demands increasing chaos and disorder allow for a framework that projects highly ordered, structured things like a human brain?
It seems like a contradiction.
Doesn't the emergence of complex life completely violate the second law of thermodynamics?
This is where the framework synthesis is truly elegant, because it doesn't fight the established science of thermodynamics. It leverages it.
Leverages it. How
The framework explains that while the total entropy of the observable universe is indeed always increasing and relentlessly marching toward disorder, local complexity can absolutely increase at the same time. But how?
Driven by that very energy flow.
Explain the mechanics of that. How does local complexity arise from increasing total chaos?
Let's expand on an analogy. Imagine a wide, fast-flowing river.
Okay, I'm picturing a river.
The river as a whole is flowing downward due to gravity, dissipating energy, eroding the banks, and constantly increasing total entropy. It is a chaotic system moving toward a lower energy state.
Right, it's just a mess of water rushing downhill.
But if a large rock sits in the middle of that river, the flow of the water around that rock will naturally create a whirlpool.
And a whirlpool is a highly ordered, stable, complex structure.
Precisely. The whirlpool is locally complex and highly structured, but its existence does not violate the river's overall flow toward disorder.
No, of course not.
In fact, the whirlpool is a direct product of that flow. The chaotic dissipation of energy literally powers the creation of local complexity.
Oh, wow. So in the framework, the continuous projection of the universe is like the flow in water.
The universe as a whole is expanding, and total entropy is increasing. But as S-energy manifests and flows through the rules of the projection codex, local whirlpools of incredible complexity naturally emerge.
Yes, the emergence of hierarchical structure, fundamental particles forming stable atoms, atoms pooling together to form stars, stars acting as engines to forge heavier elements.
Right.
Those elements coalescing into planets, and the thermal gradients on those planets providing the energy flow for biological life. None of this contradicts entropy.
It's all just whirlpools in the river.
Exactly. It is the natural consequence of continuous projection operating under thermodynamic laws.
The complexity and the entropy aren't enemies.
Exactly. The framework interprets complexity and entropy as complementary, intertwined aspects of cosmic evolution, not opposing forces.
That is so deeply satisfying to think about.
Increasing complexity represents the universe developing progressively richer, more intricate structural relationships, all while preserving its fundamental monistic origin of S-energy.
It uses thermodynamics as the engine for emergence, grounding this deeply philosophical concept firmly in the bedrock of established physics.
It perfectly bridges the two.
When you step back and look at the entire architecture we've explored today, it is absolutely staggering.
It's a huge achievement.
We started with a young man feeling a sense of awe while staring at a speck of light in a poster of the Andromeda Galaxy in 1992. And from that single spark, we have traced a 34-year journey of relentless, organized curiosity.
It is a masterclass in disciplined thought.
The uncompromising editorial rules, the unwavering commitment to the three distinct voices to protect the reader from confusion.
The pedagogical brilliance of deferring complex topics until the foundation is set.
Yes, the parking lot concept. And finally, the profound, philosophically satisfying unity of continuous projection. It all coalesces into a deeply compelling, coherent view of reality.
It really does. And what I find so poignant and honestly quite poetic is how the roadmap documents conclude.
Right, the final date.
By establishing all these rigorous rules, locking in the visual philosophy, finalizing the architecture, and freezing the foundational chapters as of August 3, 2026, the era of endless planning is officially dead.
The 34 years of dreaming and sketching are over.
The writing of the final monograph has concretely begun. The end of the roadmap is truly the beginning of the monumental work.
It is the exact moment the conceptual framework transitions from being pure potential into physical realization.
Which, given the subject matter of the framework itself, is deeply fitting.
Very fitting. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the blueprint of S-Matter in Fifth Dimension, Revision 20.A. But, as always on this show, I don't want to just let you go.
We always have to leave them thinking.
Exactly. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. Something that wasn't explicitly spelled out in the roadmap's table of contents, but naturally flows from the profound ideas we've discussed today.
Let's hear it.
If this framework is right, if reality isn't something that just happened billions of years ago in a cold, distant past,
Right.
if reality is a continuous projection happening right now, actively manifesting in this very millisecond, how does that change the way you view your own existence right in this moment?
It forces a total reevaluation of what it means to be.
It really does. You aren't just sitting in a universe that is ancient, passive, and slowly decaying. You are actively being realized.
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment. You are part of an incredibly organized, ongoing manifestation. You are the continuous projection of a timeless potential, experiencing itself through the emergent canvas of space and time.
It's beautiful, really.
Think about that the next time you look up at a poster of the night sky, or just stare into a cup of coffee. Until next time, keep diving deep.